Okay. 527,169. That is the number of open tech jobs currently in the US. That number is expected to grow to 1.4 million over the next 3 years. By the year 2020, I want you to remember that year. In the EU, it is mirrored by 800,000 empty ICT jobs. So when I look at these numbers, I'm a bit confused because if we have such a deficit, it makes me wonder, how is it that we're playing with less than half of the team? So I don't know about you, but these numbers look like crisis to me. And I believe that if we began to play with more of the team, we could wipe that deficit right out. If we were to just say the number of people in the United States between 18 and 29, people of color, we could obliterate that gap. Closer to my talk, if we were to address young women of color, we actually could do a bunch of amazing things. Number one, if we address the number of women of color between the ages of 12 and 24 who are in poverty, we could raise 39,000 of those tech jobs. We could fill them. But first, we could raise 119,000 people out of poverty, generating $297 million in personal income and raising $59.4 million in taxes. I think that's great multitasking. And I'm honored to have been part of a group of people in the United States in the Obama White House that worked on doing just that by initiating an activity called Computer Science for All. That initiative is meant to introduce computer science skills to public school children starting as early as kindergarten. So greetings and thank you for coming. My name is Brenda Darden Wilkerson, and I am the president and CEO of AnitaB.org. You may have previously heard about us when we were called the Anita Borg Institute. We just rebranded last month. 22 years ago, Anita Borg stood on the stage at the Women of Science and Engineering Conference, and she issued a challenge. She asked the audience to imagine a day when the tech workforce was 50% women by the year 2020. Now, what you have to understand is, at that time, 37% of the tech workforce was female, and 2020 was still 25 years away. It should have been a reasonable goal. Unfortunately, we fell off that cliff, and we're looking at a very different workforce today. To gender balance between 1995 and 2017, well, that could fill a keynote all of its own. But suffice it to say, we will not make it to 50-50 by 2020 or anytime soon unless we do something very different. When we look at the companies that participated in our 2017 Top Companies for Women Technologists program, we're hovering right now right around 23% women in technical roles. And this is verified by other data coming out of the US sources. So in the past few years, the numbers around women's representation has been improving, albeit very slowly. Companies are making incremental progress, but it's not happening fast enough. Our data show that we're a full 30 years away from gender parity for women in technical roles. Now, if we look at this another way, we see that there's a lopsided growth about this pattern. Even though we've been making progress over the last few years, most of it has been at the entry level. If you look at women grads, about 30% of hires are new college grads as women. But as you go up the level and go up the process of trying to progress in companies, the numbers at the C-suite level fall to less than half of that. That is a big problem. Though we've been making progress, it actually has only been beneficial to a special group of women. Well, let me put that very plainly. Most of our progress has gone to white women and slightly to women of Asian descent. The U.S. Department of Labor tells us that 5% of the tech labor workforce is African American women. But that's a group that makes up 13% of the U.S. population. Latinas fare much worse. And Native American women, their numbers are so low that they're not even being measured. Now, there's another way. So it's not terribly surprising that the pipeline is really not the problem. Our 2017 survey data tell us that just as before, women are leaving the industry at twice the rate of men. And when it comes to measuring leadership roles, more than half of women have left the industry by middle career altogether. So you might think, well, okay, that's not great, but it's not a big deal, right? Women have other places to go and achieve. But now let's be real. We're rapidly moving toward an employment base where every company is a tech company. We're not just talking about Bellevue or Berlin or Bangalore. Companies that we never traditionally would have related to as tech, they're hiring thousands of technologists. Last month at our Grace Hopper conference, the top companies for women technologist winners were an American insurance company and a global consulting firm. On average, 52% of employees in participating companies were in technical roles. The top companies leadership index, made up of organizations whose representation of women technologists ranks above the mean, includes the usual software and cloud services companies. But this list of leading organizations also includes names from the world of finance and management consulting, as well as national media and retail brands. The common thread between all participating companies is that they are willing to be held accountable, not just for the current representation of their women technologists, but also for their career trajectories. Now let's talk about the business case for gender diversity. It's well documented. Having more women in technical roles across all levels of organizations isn't just a social courtesy, it's a business imperative. Balanced hiring yields better problem solving and higher group participation scores. Diversity is also correlated with enhanced company reputation. And multiple studies show that increased gender equity leads to improved operational and financial performance. What company doesn't want all of those things? The World Economic Forum tells us that companies with a strong track record of gender diversity are 15 more likely to record higher earnings than their peers. And it also counts at the leadership level as well. Companies that have a larger percentage of women on their boards of directors perform significantly better than their gender unbalanced peers. Diverse teams also drive increased innovation, and they develop products and services that address the needs of all of their customers, not just those from the dominant culture. So a technologist from West Africa is going to approach her work very differently, but equally valid than a colleague from, say, Japan or Germany. We really can't afford to leave one perspective or the other on the cutting room floor without risking failure. Artificial intelligence interactions and machine learning increasingly define how we interact with our world. And this problem with those is going to grow exponentially. When we think about AI and we think about the failures, it's not going to be some sci-fi scenario where the computers or the robots take over the world. It's likely to be much less sinister and much more probable. People who think about this every single day, who work in AI, those experts, they tell us this is a real situation we need to address. Dr. Fei-Fei Li, the head of the AI lab at Stanford University, is one of those experts who raises her voice to say, we need to get more women and underrepresented minorities into the field before our data is irreparably biased. In fact, she has an example of a quick exercise that we can all do. If you were to go to your favorite search engine and type in grandma, you would likely be presented with pages and pages and pages of white women with gray hair. Now, it doesn't take a Stanford PhD to know that grandmothers come in all races and hair colors. This dependency will really start to impact us and become an enormous problem the more we unleash the power of AI on the world. So Fei-Fei offers this example, and there's so many others, and I invite you to try them when you go home. So, okay, now that we understand the size of the problem, how do we go about solving the problem of gender diversity? It's not just about doing a better job of getting people in the door. That's an important part. But we also need companies to move women into higher positions. But the data show that women just don't advance at the same rate as men. In a recent Catalyst survey, nearly half of Fortune 1000 women stated gender-based stereotypes and biases as a barrier to their advancement. And it's not just for lack of ambition. Many times that's what people will bring up. The Women Matter study revealed that almost equal numbers of men, 79 and 81% men and women, respectively, aspire to higher management roles. But when women who are in middle management don't see women in upper management and in executive levels, it's like that old saying, you can be what you can see. It's not surprising that many of them are discouraged and believe that it won't happen for them and perhaps is not worth the personal cost. So how can data help? So how many of you have heard the saying, if you don't measure it, you can't manage it? Well, what you might not know is that the management guru, Peter Drucker, actually never said that, even though he gets credit for it in hundreds of books and thousands of websites. No matter, it's true anyhow. It's very important that regardless of what you're doing, if it's important to you and it can drive organizational change, it must be measured. So the key principle behind our Top Companies for Women Technologists program is this: measure what matters. Leading organizations choose to participate in this program because it provides a consistent benchmark of the technical workforce across multiple industries. This year, the 63 companies that participated in this program employ over 1.3 million people, including over 574,000 technologists. Quantitative data is key, of course, but qualitative results are equally important, especially if you want to get a real picture of what's going on for women technologists. What we found over the years that we have been collecting this data and presenting this data, and I'm slow to say this in a room like this, is that the numbers aren't everything. It's very important to study the faces and the voices of the people behind them. The companies that are making the biggest strides towards equity are committed both to their progress against industry standards and to being accountable by presenting their results, not just internally, but publicly. It's actually public accountability that will drive the results. So, okay, I went too fast. So the first thing that these companies do is they work really hard to create an inclusive culture. It's no surprise that companies that strive to improve their work environment they enjoy more success with women technologists. And the best companies are fully and intentionally supportive of the advancement of women. They send a message to all employees that they believe that women are able to be successful, not only, but they're also expected to move into leadership roles. And perhaps most importantly, these companies hold everyone in their company accountable for the success of the culture. Senior executive teams play critical roles because they're the ones that set the company priorities. They communicate the goals throughout the organization. They have and allocate the resources, and they hold the frontline managers accountable for achieving them. I'm going to give you an example of that in a moment. But the other thing successful companies do is they don't rely solely on recruiting. They also develop and promote their women. They take steps to creating ways to give feedback to women early and often. Let me give you an example of that. Here is the typical advancement system of companies. We call it promotion and hold. In this model, employees wait long periods of time between promotions. In between, they may receive little information about how they are progressing towards any additional promotions. In this example, you can see why, with the long troughs in between, potentially with very little feedback, this could become interminable. In this example, you see that we have intermediate steps towards advancement. It's open, it's honest, and it gives women more of an indication of what's happening between one promotion and the next. We call it incremental advancement. In this model, advancement occurs in small, more frequent, more defined, and more transparent steps. It's not only good for the women, it's good for the companies. So I promised you an example of great accountability. 2 years ago, at the Consumer Electronics Show, Intel CEO Brian Krzanich, he's here at the conference, went out on that stage and he announced a major initiative. Brian stated that he would make possible in his US operations 100% accountability towards women and minorities by 2020. Anita would be so proud. He matched that moonshot goal with an investment of $300 million. Now, last year, he came back to the same venue and he reported some progress. The company had set an annual goal to meet this moonshot goal of 40% new hires from those target populations. And company leaders also committed to creating that environment that would retain the diverse workforce. And oh yeah, he tied it to every employee's compensation in achieving these goals. How's that for holding people accountable? Now, it's amazing what you can do when everyone is going towards a very tangible goal that has a very valid incentive. So here's how he did. Not only did he get 40%, he got 43% new hires from those representative groups. So now, why would a company that's already at the forefront of the tech industry invest hundreds of millions of dollars into a feel-good goal I posit that it is not a feel-good goal. It is a good business goal. Or to put it another way, we're at a unique point in history where the things that we are building are going to significantly impact our social, political, economical, and personal lives. Anita Borg said that 20 years ago, and it's no less true today. So I hope I've been able to give you a window into the ways that we're helping companies and workplaces to become the places where women technologists can thrive. I'm really excited to hear the things that you are doing to attack this problem in a data-oriented way. Please visit us on our website at anitab.org and reach out, and we'd love to help you along this path. Thank you.